If you walk through the halls of North Hall High School in Gainesville, Georgia, on a typical Friday, you would hear the same name echoed by athletes, math students, and faculty alike: Jason Hughes. He wasn't just a teacher who lectured from a whiteboard. He was a man who lived for the light bulb moments in his students' eyes. But on the night of March 6, 2026, the lights in the math wing went dark, and a beloved mentor's life was cut short not by malice, but by a tradition that spiraled into a nightmare. This isn't just a story about a crime. It's a story about the fragile line between a high school memory and a lifelong tragedy. For more true crime stories like this, hit the subscribe button. Jason Hughes was a man of deep faith and even deeper community ties. He and his wife, Laura, were a power couple of the North Hall Math Department. Together, they navigated the challenges of teaching, while Jason balanced his time as a golf coach and a mentor for NG3, a local Christian organization focused on character development. His life was centered around his two young sons, Owen and Luke, and a philosophy that every student was worth an investment of time and heart. In Hall County, the transition from winter to spring brings more than just warmer weather. It brings prom season, and with it, a decades-old tradition known as the Junior-Senior Wars. It's a series of pranks, mostly harmless, where students compete for points by TPING houses or harmlessly pranking their favorite teachers. Jason, being the approachable and cool coach he was a prime target. He didn't mind it. In fact, he often found the humor in the chaos. Just 24 hours before the incident, the Hall County School District had sensed a shift in the air. On Thursday, they released a public warning on social media. They spoke of integrity and respect, urging students to remember that property damage and reckless behavior could tarnish their futures. They specifically called out the Junior-Senior Wars, noting that in years prior, these games had veered dangerously close to the edge. Despite the warnings, 5 students, friends who shared classrooms and athletic fields with the man they called Coach, decided that Friday night would be their night to score points. They weren't looking for trouble. They were looking for a laugh. They packed their trucks with rolls of toilet paper and headed toward Northgate Drive, unaware that the humid, rain-slicked Georgia air was setting the stage for a catastrophe. The clock neared midnight. Outside the Hughes residence, the world was quiet except for the rustle of plastic bags and the soft thuds of toilet paper hitting the branches of the trees in the front yard. Inside, Jason Hughes wasn't sleeping. He knew they were coming. According to Laura, he wasn't sitting by the window in anger, planning a lecture. He was excited. He wanted to catch them in the act, to startle them and share a laugh about the prank before sending them home. As the 5 students finished rolling the yard and scrambled back into their 2 vehicles to make their getaway, Jason stepped out of his front door. He began to jog toward the road, his eyes on the white streamers hanging from his trees. In the lead vehicle, an 18-year-old senior named Jaden Wallace shifted his pickup truck into gear. The engine revved, the tires gripped the wet pavement, and as Jaden pulled away, he checked his mirrors, but he couldn't see what was happening in the shadows behind his tailgate. In that split second, a slip on the rain-slicked asphalt changed the trajectory of 6 lives forever. For more true crime stories like this, hit the subscribe button. The sound wasn't what anyone expected. It wasn't the loud crash of a typical accident. It was a sickening realization that hit the students the moment the truck lurched. Jaden Wallace stopped the vehicle immediately. His 4 friends, Elijah Owens, Aiden Hu, Anna Lookie, and Ariana Cruz, froze as the reality of the situation dawned on them. Their teacher, the man who had likely encouraged them in the gym or helped them through a calculus problem earlier that week, was lying in the road. The transition from a prank to a life-saving effort happened in heartbeats. These were not criminals fleeing a scene. These were terrified teenagers who immediately jumped out of their vehicles to render aid. They called 911 at 11:40 p.m., their voices shaking as they spoke to Hall County dispatchers. They stayed by Jason's side, trying to help him breathe, trying to undo the physics of a tragedy that had already been set in motion. When the Hall County deputies arrived, the scene was a jarring juxtaposition of high school mischief and mortal stakes. White toilet paper still hung from the trees, fluttering in the night breeze, while the blue and red lights of the ambulance illuminated the driveway. Jason Hughes was rushed to a nearby hospital, but the injuries sustained from the pickup truck were too severe. He was pronounced dead shortly after arrival. Deputies began the grim task of piecing together the timeline. Jaden Wallace was taken into custody. The charges were heavy: first-degree vehicular homicide and reckless driving, alongside misdemeanors for criminal trespassing and littering. His 4 companions were also charged with the misdemeanors, linked to the TPING that had brought them to the property. Legal experts and investigators began looking at the black box data of the pickup truck and searching for any available footage from nearby ring cameras or dashcams. The central question for the district attorney wasn't just what happened, but how fast it happened. Was Jaden Wallace driving with the reckless intent required for a first-degree homicide charge, or was this a series of unfortunate physical events? The road conditions became a focal point. It had rained recently, leaving a thin, slick film on the asphalt. Witnesses and family statements suggested that Jason hadn't been hit while standing. Rather, he had tripped and fallen into the path of the departing vehicle. This distinction between a driver hitting a pedestrian and a pedestrian falling under a moving vehicle would become the crux of the legal battle. By Saturday morning, the news had shattered North Hall High. Crisis teams were deployed to the campus, but the grief was too large for a single room. Students didn't just gather to cry, they gathered to remember. They created a makeshift memorial at the school, leaving behind flowers, letters, and golf balls. The junior-senior wars were immediately halted, replaced by a silent, heavy realization of the district's earlier warning. As the community prepared for a funeral they never thought they'd attend, the legal system began to grind forward. Jaden Wallace faced a future behind bars, and the other 4 students faced the weight of their involvement. But then, a voice emerged from the center of the grief, one that no one expected to hear, offering a perspective that would challenge the very nature of the prosecution. For more true crime stories like this, hit the subscribe button. While the state of Georgia moved forward with its case against Jaden Wallace, Jason's widow, Laura Hughes, did something that stunned the community. She released a formal statement to the media, but it wasn't a call for vengeance. She described the second tragedy that was looming: the possibility of 5 young lives being ruined by a freak accident. Laura clarified the facts from her perspective as a witness to her husband's life. She explained that Jason went outside not to confront the students with anger, but to participate in the cat and mouse fun of the prank. She emphasized that he loved these children and that his entire career had been dedicated to their success. Her message was clear: our family is determined to prevent a separate tragedy from occurring. She requested that the charges against all 5 students be dropped. In the eyes of the law, however, forgiveness doesn't always equal an acquittal. Criminal defense attorney Meg Strickler noted that while a victim's family has significant input, the district attorney represents the state, not the individual. The state had to determine if the reckless driving component was egregious enough to warrant a felony. The investigation turned toward the technical. Forensic analysts examined the truck for impact points. Was there damage on the front bumper, or was the contact strictly underneath? If the data showed Jaden was speeding excessively through a residential neighborhood, the accident could still be classified as a crime. The upcoming preliminary hearing on April 1st became a date that the entire county watched with bated breath. Beyond the courtroom, the financial and emotional toll continued to climb. A GoFundMe for the Hughes family quickly surpassed $200,000, a testament to how many lives Jason had touched. But the money couldn't fill the void for Owen and Luke, who would now grow up hearing stories about their father's heroism and his final, tragic night. The conversation in Hall County shifted from, "What did these kids do?" to, "How do we change?" There were calls to transform the junior-senior wars into something constructive, community service wars or charity drives, to ensure that no other family would ever have to stand in Laura Hughes' shoes. The students involved, released on bond, were left to navigate a world where they were suddenly the face of a national conversation on prank culture and its consequences. As the sun sets over the North Hall golf course, the memory of Jason Hughes remains vibrant. He is remembered not for the way he died, but for the grace his family extended in the aftermath. The compassionate and documentary reality of this case is that there are no winners. There is a widow who chose mercy over malice, 5 teenagers who will carry the weight of a rainy Friday night for the rest of their lives, and a community that learned the hardest possible lesson about the value of a single moment. The legal proceedings are still unfolding, and the black box of the truck may yet reveal secrets about the speed and intent of that night. But for the people of Gainesville, the verdict on Jason Hughes' life has already been reached. He was a man who gave everything to his students, even in the end his very life, and a man whose final lesson taught through his wife was one of radical, heartbreaking forgiveness. And as always, you've been watching True Crime Story Vault, where every story is told with facts, empathy, and respect for those who can no longer speak for themselves. For more true crime stories like this, hit the subscribe button, like, and comment your thoughts below. Until next time, remember, the truth is never buried.